Hello everyone, my name is Adam, welcome back to another film review, and in today's episode we're going to be taking a look at Jonathan Demme's The Silence of the Lambs on Criterion DVD. Now, Silence of the Lambs is a great film. It's been remastered and released on many different formats over the years. I thought I'd like to talk about the Criterion DVD in this video and also kind of go through the other releases in a way to find out maybe which one is the best release, because they're all very different. Now, Silence of the Lambs came out on February the 14th in the cinema, 1991. On a budget of only 19 million, it made over 272 million in the box office and won loads of Academy Awards. Probably made twice that in home media since 1991. Now, it was based off the book by Thomas Harris, which I'm currently reading, and I will do a review on the book when I finish it. Before the book was actually published, I believe Gene Hackman first got wind of this because he was a fan of Red Dragon. And he contacted Thomas Harris, found out he was working on a book, and said he wanted to be the director on this project. So he cut the deal with Orion Pictures. He employed Ted Talley to do a screenwrite of the book. Literally, as it was being published out to the public, Ted Talley was working on the script for the film. Obviously became a big hit when it was published. Grew from a following from Red Dragon, released years before that. Even had its own film. Dino Laurentiis owned the rights to the Silence of the Lambs book, and decided just to give it to Orion Pictures with Gene Hackman, because he didn't have a good experience with the Manhunter film, didn't think it was very good, and so was didn't see any worth in this, so just literally gave the rights away. Now, Ted Talley eventually finished the script, and Gene Hackman was like, yeah, this is actually a bit horrific. I'm not on board with this anymore, so I'm going to jump ship. And probably went on to do Crimson Tide at this time. But recommended that Jonathan Demme would not only benefit from this project, but the project would benefit from him being attached as director. And so Gene Hackman went off, R.I.P., and Jonathan Demme was the new director. Now, he wanted Michelle Pfeiffer and Sean Connery in the lead roles. Imagine the film that would be if that were true, right? Once the script was finished, they got to read the script, and they both declined it because they said it was too gory. Probably just saw it as some sort of B-movie horror fest, and they said, no thank you. Jodie Foster had actually inquired about the character Clary Starling. Jonathan Demme didn't actually, see her as a valid option, so a casting call was put out to find the Clary Starling. Jonathan Demme had seen The Elephant Man that Anthony Hopkins was in, and really saw his performance as Hannibal Lecter, and contacted him. They had a meeting. As Anthony Hopkins was reading the script, he went, I'll do this. This is great. Yes, please. So he had found his Hannibal, but unfortunately, he hadn't found his Clary Starling just yet. All the actresses that were reading the script turned it down because they just thought it was too gory, and it wasn't very, I don't want to be involved in this horror project. And eventually, Jodie Foster got cast. Now, if that was off the back of there was no one else, or he really did believe in her, I don't know. Who knows? But production went into effect in November 1989, and when it was released, it made loads of money. It was filmed on Panavision cameras using Panavision lenses and Eastman Kodak stocks. The director of photography was Tak Fujimoto, and the music composer was Howard Shore, and it is an excellent score that Howard gave this movie. The movie itself, everybody's seen it. I don't need to even talk about the film. It stars Jodie Foster, Anthony Hopkins, Scott Glenn, Ted Levine. It's an amazing film. It is definitely up there with a definite sort of October watch, for Halloween, Now, let's talk about the home media releases. They're all quite interesting. And I've done a little bit of research to this, even contacting Criterion themselves for information about their involvement. So when it came to release on home video, 1991, Orion Pictures struck a 1K master on magnetic tape from a 35mm print and released it on VHS, and it was in the 4:3 ratio. This was a very grainy release. It's not very good picture quality compared to later down the line releases. It was a VHS after all. But the same year, now either after they saw this release or because they wanted it in their library anyway, Criterion Club went to the 35mm original camera negatives and struck a 1K master, again on magnetic tape. That's the way the master was done, but it was 1000 lines of resolution per frame, and they brought out a laser disc with stereo sound, widescreen, in 1991. It didn't have any extras on it though, which is a bit weird because Criterion are known for, not only restoring films but also kind of putting it in a decent package. But this one, the only benefit this had was that it was widescreen. It was better quality than the previous release, and it had the stereo sound over the mono that the VHS had. That's it really. And then in 1994, for whatever reason, Criterion went back to the original 35mm negatives, with the director of photography, Tak Fujimoto, approving the 2K scan this time of the original camera negatives to create a special edition laserdisc of The Silence of the Lambs. They also got in contact with the filmmakers, the actresses, the writers, and an FBI agent to provide a commentary track with it. Got loads of deleted scenes put together and loads of essays on serial killers, production notes, trailers, and released the special edition Criterion, which is a bit more in keeping with the Criterion releases of the past. This was the best version of the film to date. Much better than the VHS, and a lot of people will probably say much better than their earlier 1991 efforts. Then in 1998, from the exact same magnetic tape master that they did the Laserdisc, literally just imaged the Criterion DVD here. Using the exact same version from the Laserdisc with all the extras. It's basically a port to DVD. It's not an anamorphic image on the disc. It is literally what was on the Laserdisc, and it does carry that analog noise over from the Laserdisc as well. But to date, on DVD, this would have been considered the best version by most people. Then, in 1999, 20th Century Fox and MGM got together to create a new 2K digital intermediate scan this time. So each frame was scanned 2000 lines of resolution per frame to a digital intermediate, which is basically like a transcode file, like a terabyte in size, very big, stereo sound. They did the stereo sound into 5.1. And the picture quality from the digital into negative was super clean, and created a special edition version on DVD. I used to have this special edition version. It was a 2-disc set. They didn't have any commentary on the film, Criterion owned that, but they did get the deleted scenes. There was a new documentary made called Inside the Labyrinth, as well as interviews, trailers, the usual, stuff that would go on. And it was actually a very good release. I owned it. I used to own it on DVD. Don't have it anymore. And that was pretty much the Uber version at the time. And any other DVD version from that point on up until about 2006 would have been struck from that same 2K master. Then in, I would say, about 2006, I could be wrong, this version came out. This is basically that exact same master, 2K digital intermediate, but this time on Blu-ray. all the same features from the special edition were put onto this. This is basically like the master of that DVD. You know, it's 1080p quality, it's high definition, it's 5.1 stereo sound, it's actually region free, you know, and it has all those extras. The original 1991 making of, deleted scenes, scoring the silence, the Silence of the Lambs from page to screen, Inside the Labyrinth, a phone message from Anthony Hopkins, 30 seconds of him going, "Hello, Clarice." Breaking the Silence featurette, Understanding the Madness, and the trailer. Obviously no commentary from Criterion because they own that. And this was now considered the Uber version at the time. Now, the main difference between these two releases here is that the director of photography, Tak Fujimoto, actually supervised the scan and master of this, version. He wasn't involved in the 1999, rescan of the film. Now, any Blu-ray that came from 1999 to 2008 came from this exact same 2K master. You know, multiple regions around the world got in on the act. I mean, it's an Academy Award winning film. It's hot property. You'll find this in variations that was released between 2006 to 2008. Probably even including up to 2012 and 13. Then in 2008, Criterion Edition, they went back to the original 35mm camera negatives, again with the director of photography, Tak Fujimoto, and struck a new restoration 4K scan of those, negatives. And released on DVD and Blu-ray in 2009, this new restoration version with new interviews. It used all the same extras that you found on the original Laserdisc and DVD release, just ported over, but it also contained new interviews. It didn't contain the Inside the Labyrinth though documentary, because that was owned by MGM 20th Century Fox. And that became the Uber version and everyone's favorite version, up to date. And in 2018 or 2021, a company called, and I'm going to say this wrong and I'm very sorry, but like Kilo Liner or Lino Killer, something like that. They went to Criterion. They actually got hold of the digital intermediate, which is just, a file or a series of files on a PC. And they took that, which was just the scan of the negatives, and they ran it through their system and graded it themselves without the help of the director of photography, Tak Fujimoto. And they got hold of the Inside the Labyrinth documentary with the deleted scenes. I believe they also got a commentary on that, release. And they released a 4K version of the film. Finally, Silence of the Lambs in 4K. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then last year in 2024, as we're recording this video, it's 2025, Arrow Video released a version as well, which basically again went back to that Criterion 4K scan, took it and did their own version of it as well. Didn't have the Inside the Labyrinth documentary, but they did add not only this, I believe, the commentary from the previous 4K release and all those extras, but also added a couple of other commentaries and I believe maybe some new interviews. I'm not really sure on that. And released it, and it also came with a book, and that became now the next Uber release. And that's pretty much all the releases. There's literally been about 15 releases, different versions of this film over since 1991. Why do I prefer the Criterion DVD? Okay, yes, it's a DVD. Okay, it's unanamorphic, so and it's a single disc. You open it up, that's all you get. Okay, and obviously you get some write-up, pages, as well as the back credits. But why do I prefer this one? Okay. Well, 1991, the film's just been made. So prints are, you know, pristine. Unfortunately, Orion Pictures, they took a 35mm print for the very first release. Not a good idea. Criterion, though, for their second Laserdisc release, went to the 35mm negatives. So that's a sharper negative image rather than a copy, the 35mm print. So going back to the original negatives, they struck a 2K master, which has twice the resolution of any release previous, even their own Laserdisc. They shoved in loads of extras. The commentary is fantastic to listen to. It is really a deep dive not only into each actor's perspective of their own character, the story as a whole, you know, the director talking about his decisions. Like, it is probably one of the best commentaries I've actually listened to. It's really informative. There's an FBI agent in there telling him, oh yeah, that's me, I'm in the film, and this character is based on me, and I help them do this and do that. And you've got Ted Talley talking as well, the actual writer, you know, so you got the actors, the director, the writer, and a consultant. It is a really interesting, you know, dive commentary, I would say, you know, into the film. So you've got that on there. And on Laserdisc, sadly, it's analog. It's uncompressed. That's great. Unfortunately, Laserdisc does suffer from analog noise. And so analog noise techniques are utilized in the processing to disc phase to limit the amount of noise that will transfer over to the disc. So when you watch it, there's minimal noise that, you know, your Laserdisc player or your TV may also try and denoise. This can appear as like ghosting, you know, streaking across the image, or having, like, you know, one side a bit bright and then it kind of streak across, or, you know, just weird effects that aren't a part of the prints or the negatives, but the process of transferring from a analog master tape to the disc. And this DVD is a carbon copy of that Laserdisc. It is literally the same magnetic tape master that was used to then spit to the disc that was put on here, which is why it's not anamorphic. Same extras, okay? And I'm going to put some pictures up here now, okay, of this release. The brightness level, the colors, the fine detail that I've noticed on this DVD, it far exceeds the Blu-ray and 4K releases. And I know you're screaming at me going, mate, you're talking absolute bollocks now, okay? But remember, this was done under the supervision and approval of the director of photography, Tak Fujimoto, you know, worked on the film. This is exactly what the director wanted on release, okay? Which none of the non-Criterion editions actually have. The Kilo Liner release, okay, has a green, and I'm going to put 3 scenes up now of Hannibal Lecter from this release, the 4K, the first 4K release, and the Blu-ray, or the second 4K release, right? There is a green tint on that first 4K release, which is not the grade, the color grade of the original intent of the film. There is... because it comes from a 4K scan, that 4K scan is picking up on print, on a negative that's been sitting, you know, collecting dust. That is picking up everything, all the grain, all the dust, all the imperfections. And I gotta say, the original negatives, or the prints that were used originally anyway, weren't that in great condition, you know, when it came time to do the scan. So some DNR had to be used to scrub clean some of the grain, to scrub clean the image, to, you know, it was a restoration job, don't forget, on the 4K scan. So not only is the new Criterion version based off this 4K scan, but every other version after that from 2008 onwards uses this 4K scan. Obviously, there was no 4K release in 2008 because 4K wasn't a thing back then, but the scan was done in 4K. But then the technology of the tools evolve over time, so by the time you get to the most recent Arrow release, they've got better tools than perhaps 3 years prior to the Kilner release, but also, you know, in 2008 before the, you know, Criterion collection, which again, the Criterion 2008-2009 release was supervised by the director of photography as well. That has a very nice transfer, but it's from a 4K print and it has been scrubbed. Now, this one hasn't been scrubbed like the digitally ones, because this came from an analog master, okay, not a digital intermediate. So the grading on this is far more faithful to the previous Laserdisc release or the theatrical release. Like, I see, and this is crazy now, I see more detail in this print than what came after on Blu-ray and 4K. If you look at the Hannibal Lecter scene when Clarice first goes to see him, on the back wall, it's very gritty, very rugged. You know, it's a brick, a particular type of a brick, like a sandstone wall or whatever it is. But it's a very particular type, and it's very gritty and very, you know, hard, craggy edges. You go look on the any Blu-ray release, you know, like including this one, you know, and the 4K releases, and that wall has soft rounded edges. It has a much more softer approach to it. It's completely different for these two releases. I do feel that the DNR used on Blu-ray and 4K does actually harm the film. For as much detail as you get, you have the same amount of detail, okay? Because a 2K scan can pick up all the detail, you know, but a 4K scan can pick up the grain and the dust even better than the 2K scan will. So, but we're not talking about, you know, grain and dust now. Talking about the elements within the frame, the people, the buildings, you know, the sky. It is what it is. A 2K scan can pick up that in a frame just fine. A 4K one, it's the same elements. They haven't changed. They haven't gotten better. So a 4K scan is picking up the same what a 2K scan is, but more of the grain and dirt, and yeah, probably deeper color, because the format has a wider dynamic range. Blu-ray over DVD has a wider dynamic range. The colors on this Blu-ray don't look the same as the colors on this DVD, mainly down to the format, but also the scan as well, because this wasn't, you know, Fuji approved. I noticed it mainly on Clarice Starling's coat when she goes into the garage. It's very green in this one, not like bright green, it's moss green, but it's just green. That's it. On this one, and I didn't take any pictures, I'm really sorry, there is a fine layer of almost brown dust on her green coat as well. And it's not as green on the Blu-ray as it is in this one. It is a subtle green, but there is a fine level of like dust, brown dust on her coat. And I've never seen that on this Blu-ray or any subsequent release. I have seen footage from both 4Ks and the Criterion Future one, but I've never seen that level of dusting, you know, dirt that I see in this one. This one has a grittiness to it. The white, the luminance of this print is much better than any future print. In fact, they get darker as you get closer to the, you know, Arrow one for some reason. The Arrow one is darker. The Kilner one is like green dark. You know, the Criterion is a couple of notches darker, but that might be the format having a better dynamic range. So you get deeper blacks, but you also get whiter whites. And I know that the first 4K one had, people were saying there was issues for the first 20 minutes. The whites were whiter than it should be, and the Arrow video fixed that. Basically, I do believe that the 4K ones actually don't represent the theatrical release as well as this Criterion DVD. The pictures that I'm showing you, you'll like from the version you have, you'll notice how different they look and how clean the light looks. You know, the prints are cleaner, you know, and they're not run through any, you know, tools that actually harms the elements on the film in terms of making things look soft. Like the same amount of details there. Looking at the scene with Barney when Clarice first meets him, and you see his very fine hair on the edge of his head. I see that in this as much as I see it in this. There's no difference really. Like the same amount of detail can be captured on a DVD than on a 4K print. It's just highlighted more on a 4K because of the higher white levels. That's not always a good thing, you know. On my setup, you know, DVDs look amazing. Like DVDs look like Blu-rays in terms of their color. Like obviously there is a bit more noise on a DVD than a Blu-ray, you know, artifacts. But you can see from the pictures that it looks great, you know. There is a different color palette to this Criterion DVD and Laserdisc, which, you know, this stems from, than there is on future editions. Even the Criterion edition, you know. It's mad, it's crazy. But that's my preferred one. At the end of the day, it don't matter what I think. It's what you think. Which one's your favorite? I want to know in the comments below, which one is your favorite? Somebody on Facebook told me that their favorite one was that green tinted Kilner one. You know, each to their own though, isn't it? How lucky are we that Silence of the Lambs has that many editions available that you can literally choose from one of 4 different, like, color variation versions, you know? Like, obviously, the editing hasn't changed. The film is still the same length, same film, all that. It's the picture color. And the sound. This only has a stereo sound with a Matrix surround sound built into it. That's what it was at the cinema. This one has a created 5.1 track mix. I don't know what the 4K sound ones are, if there's an Atmos in there or whatever, but at the end of the day, the film was never made in 5.1. It was made in stereo with a surround matrix built in, and that is exactly what is on this disc. This sounds a lot better than this, right? When Clarice first goes to see Hannibal and she's in that room with Barney, there is this there is this lower tone sort of sound, and Jonathan Demme talks about it. He plays sounds of a submarine, you know, sort of floating underneath, you know, in the mix to give it this kind of woo thing, right? And you don't really notice. You do notice it, and you don't. It's not overpowering. It's not there, obviously. It's just, you know, if you've got a decent, you know, bassy setup, you might hear it more than if you watched it on the telly. You probably won't hear it just off a TV speaker, you know. But it's underneath the soundtrack, and it's kind of eerie, you know. This, you know, on this Blu-ray and the 4K editions, it's like, mate, who's got the giant vibrator in the room here? Because it's like, where's this noise coming from suddenly? Like, they've got a monitor, a dude in a gun cage, Barney. Like, who's making this noise? It takes you out of... It took me out of the film when that came up because it's so overpowering, more so than it is on the DVD, right? The soundscape on Blu-ray and 4K is just weak compared to the stereo surround mix. Like, this is where, I'm sorry, Laserdisc and DVD trump Blu-ray and 4K in the sound department. Yes, it's clearer. You know, you probably hear like more sounds because they're not buried in the mix somewhere, or lower in volume because of the format difference. But it's not what was in the theater, and it sounds like stretched out, unnaturally faded. Like, it doesn't sound good when you listen to this. I literally paid £2 for this DVD off eBay. The Laserdisc version of this very same, you know, Criterion version is like 30 to 40 quid. Okay, £2. I recommend going on eBay, grabbing this £2 version, firing it up. Let me know what you think, because this is my preferred way to watch Silence of the Lambs. Rant over, guys. Okay, but like I said, let me know what your favorite version is. Next up, we will be reviewing Hannibal on Superbit. I can't wait, guys. Happy Halloween for this month, and join me in the next one when I'll be doing Hannibal, literally for Halloween day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.